other guys. Good stuff. Good times. Good times. Yeah, we're live. It's 10:05. Live. It's 10:05. Excuse me. We've got good stuff going on today. So hopefully everyone's getting prepped for Christmas. We got tomorrow's Christmas Eve, which is awesome. So hopefully you guys, just about time for guys to go out and start doing their shopping. So probably one more day. Probably tomorrow is when everyone's going to be going. But today we want to talk about supercharged big blocks. So particularly, and this is often the case. Where do you want your power? So I did a comparison years ago on a 540-inch big block Chevy. So it was a Dart SHP short block, I think. We put a big cam in it, put some Dart, I think they were 335 Pro 1 heads on it. And it did well. We did a bunch of stuff with it. We ran blowers and turbos and nitrous and tunnel rams and all kinds of stuff. And we did a lot of testing with it. It was a good motor. But one of the comparisons I did was a VORTECH centrifugal supercharger versus an 871 from the guys at the blower shop. They do great work there. So if you're looking for, like billet blowers and all that stuff, they do really good stuff there. But the question comes down to not necessarily which one of those blowers is better, because everyone wants, which one's better? Well, we're going to take a look at that. It depends on what you want. And whatever you want, there is a blower that's designed to give you more of that. And just like with a single plane, dual plane intake manifold test, or a big cam and a small cam, or, cylinder heads, I think to a lesser extent. But, all of these considerations have to come into play. You have to ask yourself what you want. And the thing is, what do you want more of? And then we have to go past that and go, okay, is more really what I need, even if that's what I want? So in the case of this big block, what we have is an 871 supercharger provides really good boost response. I mean, it provides a visual statement that's, I think it would be arguably second to none. Big blower sticking out of the hood, 2 carburetors. You could see the pulley spinning and all that stuff. And that's all awesomeness if that's your thing. Seeing around it is a little harder when you're, from the engine or from the driver's seat, but still cool. And so all kinds of awesomeness. It definitely makes a statement, both from a noise standpoint and a visual standpoint. So if you're cruising down to Cars and Coffee or whatever, or just cruising down the road and want everybody to say, everything screams, hey, look at this, check this out, this is awesome. It's definitely cool. So it does that. But the other thing that it does from our discussion standpoint is on the dyno or on the street or chassis dyno track, wherever, they make decidedly different power curves. So they're both superchargers. They're both mechanically driven basically off of the motor. So the boost that they're providing is relative to engine speed, but one of them provides a completely different boost curve than the other. On the Roots blower, we have a slightly rising boost curve, but it has a lot more boost earlier in the RPM range. So when you step on the gas, you got an immediate hit of boost. The centrifugal blower, when you hit the gas, down low at some low RPM, you have immediate boost. You just don't have nearly as much of it. Where you might have 8 or 10 pounds with the Roots blower, you have 2 or 3 with the centrifugal blower. And there's obviously a big change in power output between those two because of that difference in boost level. Now, the centrifugal blower is going to be way more efficient on the big end than the Roots blower is at any given boost level. So it provides more power on the top end. And therein lies your choice. So which one of these things would you rather have? These are both 1,000 horsepower blown big block combinations, whether you have the 871 on there or whether you have the VORTECH on there. And you could turn these up to way beyond what we did here, because just putting the right size blower on there can dictate in how fast you spin it relative to the motor, can dictate how much power you want to make. But this is an interesting comparison because they were both run at the same boost level. And that's, let's see. That's 10 pounds there. I just want to verify this. Yeah. just somewhere in the tens, 10 and 10.5 pounds of boost. So they're both running the same thing. The interesting thing on this is if we look down at 3,800 RPM, the roots blower, the big roots blower, 871, not huge, not 1471, but biggish, an 871 on this 540 produced 850 foot-pounds of torque at 3,800 RPM. We ran it lower than that too. I'm just using that as the reference point. The VORTECH produced 700 foot-pounds of torque at 3,800 RPM. So there's a difference of 150 foot-pounds there at 3,800 RPM. So the question is, which one of those do you want? Do you want the more or do you want the less? If we look at the other end of the RPM range on this Supercharger 540, the VORTECH made about 150 more horsepower than the roots blower did. The roots blower made 1,010 at 6,800, and the VORTECH made 1,160 at 6,800. Again, remember, it's the same boost level. Now we may be able to go in and, you could argue, you could change that, you could tune that, you could do whatever and make it closer or farther away or whatever you want to do. But in this test, this is what happened. So, and this is typical of other roots blower twin screw kind of things that I've done in the past. So at 6,800, the centrifugal blower has an extra 150 horsepower. At 3,800, the roots blower has an extra 150 foot-pounds of torque. So my question to you guys is, which one of those would you rather have? I know we want both. Yes, I know we don't have that though. Which one of those would you rather have? Would you rather have an extra 150 foot-pounds down low? And 3,800 is not terribly down low. Or an extra 150 horsepower at 6,800 RPM. Which one of those would you rather have? And here's the thing that you have to look at. If you were talking about, the difference between, if we had 150 foot-pound difference between the two, and one of them was 300 and the other one was 450, both of those, I would argue, are very manageable. And so you don't have to worry. You don't have an extreme traction situation. 700 foot-pounds of torque at 3,800 RPM is already into, I don't really have all the traction that I really would want. That's a lot of torque already at 3,800 RPM. 850 foot-pounds at 3,800 RPM borders, I think, on a ridiculous amount, and certainly difficult to hook up. So do you already have that becomes the secondary question? Okay, if you're a guy, then you got the roots blower. I want the visual statement. I like the way it sounds, like the way it looks. It's awesome, and it provides a whole bunch more torque, which is what I want. I want immediate boost response. But do you now have more than you need? Is it enough? Is it too much? Do we have a traction issue if you're going to try to drag race this thing? Do you not have it where you want it? Do you have it exactly where you want it? Because look, all I want to do is just annihilate the tires. This will definitely do that. So again, it speaks to what is it you're trying to get done? What thing are you trying to achieve here? And then you'd pick the one that you want. I think if you're going to drag race these things, having the extra 150 horsepower on the top for the centrifugal, if you had a stall converter in this thing and you could hook this thing up, even at 700 foot-pounds of torque at 3,800, could you hook that up? You're going to have to work on getting 700 foot-pounds of torque hooked up because that's a lot. And then so you'd be working on that anyway. And then the extra 150 horsepower, and then the gain appears obviously before 6,800. The crossover is way before that. So it's making more power for a good portion of the top end of the curve where you would be drag racing. If you want to do that, then I think that there's a clear choice. If you want to do this other stuff, I also think that there's a clear choice, but it's a personal thing. What is your goal? What are the things that you're trying to achieve here? And then you pick the thing, you pick it accordingly. And both of them have the place. But I'm curious to see what you guys think. What do you guys think? Which one of those would you rather have? Let's see. Okay, would you use the extra 150 foot-pounds of torque at 3,800 RPM more than you would use the extra 150 horsepower at 6,800 RPM? So would you use the extra torque more than the extra horsepower? Let me know in the comments. Let me know. Let me know. Gotta go. Gotta go. BBC stands for Big Block Chevy. I just really quickly saw that question. Turbo Central, what's going on? Jordan. Obviously, make sure go check out. Shout out to the guys at Brian Tooley Racing, Airflow Research, all of that. You know, the guys from VORTECH, which we're talking about on the Supercharger here, for helping out with the channel. So thank you guys for that. Merry Christmas to all of those guys. And also make sure to go check out richardholdenerperformance.com for your LS power needs. Just LS right now, although some of the things carry over, like we've got the Hellcat pump, the Hellcat Plus pump, not the Hellcat pump, Hellcat Plus pump, better than the Hellcat, and then injectors and stuff. And we're going to have turbos and all of that stuff. So we're continuing to grow. It's exciting. So we got that going on. I'm doing a 540 Big Block Chevy with an F1X now. Should be a great video. The F1X is a good blower. I think we had let me check. I'm thinking that we had a Mondo blower on here or something. Let's see. Test description. A VORTECH double X. Yep. The double X trim. Double X, yo. So you have a lot of supercharger there. That'll be good. We've run the F1A94 on there. I don't know if I've run a bigger ProCharger on there. Low to mid-range power is just awesome, in my opinion. It is. Traction optional. Yeah, 850 foot-pounds would be definitely traction optional. More torque on the street. I'm not racing, just having fun. Getaway, what's going on, Rich? Chevy Love. What's up, Rich? Hope you're having a good Monday. We are so far. Do you have a different cam between a ProCharger and a 1071? No, these had the same cam. And the cam that I had in there was not a blower cam. It's not a positive displacement blower cam. Was not a centrifugal blower cam. In fact, was a big NA cam actually. And yet it also worked. It worked NA. It worked with nitrous. Worked with both of these different kinds of blowers. It works with lots of stuff because that's what cams do. Obituary, you're all about the top end. Those roots more down low because of its size compared to a screw. This wasn't a screw blower. This was a centrifugal blower. A twin screw is a different thing. Also is sized more like a roots blower is. But the rotor pack is bigger, and so it's moving more air for every revolution than an impeller, which is a centrifugal blower is more like a turbo, but it's crank driven. Building a 555 ProCharge Big Block Chevy, Merlin block, Callies, cranking rods, but pistons. Cam is a good combo for max power. What you got to tell me how much power you're trying to make. The pistons, we use the Bullet series stuff in ours. Lots of good pistons out there. K1, the Scat has good stuff. The Race Tech stuff. There's lots of good pistons out there. I think ours was on this 540. It was actually low compression. It was like high 8s or low 9s. It's just because that's what it was. It's not because we picked that. Depends on if a no prep surface is a sicky track, top end in the car, too much torque, big truck, roots. My Ford 5-liter turbo build with a goal of 450 to 500 seems so lame compared to these numbers. No, that's a turbo 5-liter in a Mustang, even at 500 horsepower, is a really, really fun car. Big blocks make plenty of tire burning torque. NA, give me a big turbo that comes on gently to add lots of flow potential. All right. Ralph is throwing an amen in there. Depending if I'm running a small tire setup or a big tire on the street, less torque and more horsepower on top. Can't wait to feel the instant torque from the Sentra. How's that thing going, Turbo Sentra? How's the blower thing doing? Rather have torque with a big block. Would be a fun experience. I agree. Push the like button. That's right. You can never have enough. 5.3 or 6.0 turbo build? Yes, is the answer to those, to either one of those and both of those. Scramble boost, whichever is easier to get, both make big power. Top end Tony torque is what you get with a big block. What does big block Chevy stand for? BBC or British Broadcasting. I guess people are answering that already. Merry Christmas or Happy Christmas if you're in the UK. Word said, solid question. 2,500 pounds, around 250 wheel horsepower. That's good. That's exactly the kind of ratio that you want, right? It's 10 to 1. Seems you get different Google results for BBC depending on whether a safe search is turned on or not. I just put a 1471, have the best of both worlds using less boost. I'm not sure how the lower boost level would, how you would get lower boost. On a heavier car truck, I'd see the benefits of low end torque. I've never experienced them on a big block Chevy, but I have a Gen 5 LT. I like the tighter converter and more torque on a street strip car. Garage, which one do you want? Either one of those works. You got to ask yourself. That's not the question you need to be asking yourself. You need to be asking yourself other questions. You need to be asking yourself, first of all, what's my power output? And then what do I want to do to achieve that power output? What is the availability? What's better for drivability of the engine? that's not a consideration on either one of these. What's the maximum blower speed on an 871? I don't know. I'd have to ask on this one was a stripped blower, I think. So I'd have to ask the guys at the blower shop what the maximum speed would be. 6,800 for me. I'm happy with that. Could I have a spun bearing with no knocking, just loud squeaking? What's your oil pressure look like? Can it be an extra 150 foot-pounds at 6,800? Shopping for a turbo. Notice the live stream is up. That's right. What turbo are you going to get? A Turbo Fox 500 horsepower will rip the torque boxes right out. Yeah, because it's going to make 500, at least 500 foot-pounds too. Volvo 242. You'd use a bit of nitrous on the supercharger and make bigger torque and horsepower down low and up top because nitrous fixes everything. Uh-oh, turbo. Sorry to hear that, man. But it is running, though. It's running good. Upside for roots, torque improves acceleration. Downside, tall engine, especially with the intercooler. Thanks for your holiday support. That's important, right? We're all in this together. We're all in this crazy season. And like I said, tomorrow's the last day for shopping for dudes. Would you use the extra 150 foot-pounds at 3,800 more than the extra 150 horsepower at 6,800? 75%. Or split 3/4, 1/4. 3/4 and 1/4. I think I did. Did we do this test on something else too? I think we did it on something else besides the 540. Well, I have. We did it on a small block Ford. We did it on the Honda, and we did it on the modular Ford too. Same kind of thing with all of those, where both of these positive displacement blowers, because the twin screw is also positive displacement. So when we put the Kenny Bell on there, same kind of thing. The Kenny Bell was a little bit more of a rising curve because we were trying to match peak boost. So the Kenny Bell is a little more efficient, and then the Roots blower, because of its sizing that we were running, that 112. Tended to run out of steam at the power level that we were testing it at. So it actually had the peak boost in the middle part of the curve and then started falling off. Richard, you said you have a Hellcat pump on your site. Yes, we have Hellcat Plus, which is 535 liters an hour. Richard, okay. I have an 87 Chevy Sprint non-turbo. It's slow. Can I put a TBS on it? You can put a turbo on it. Yeah, there's a lot of forced induction is the best way to get power from that thing, because it's, let's face it, it's if you add a header and a ported head and a cam and all that stuff, and you can get I don't know, 10 or 12 horsepower or whatever. I mean, as a percentage, it's still a good gain, but the turbo stuff is the way to go, or the little blower. Looking for a power upgrade for my 71 Fury. Thinking either a 440 stroker or 572. Goal is 800. Currently has a 440 and a 727. Well, if you already have a 440, you could obviously stroke that, or supercharge that, or turbocharge that. Oh, that's good. If I do a 6-liter, I want an 80 millimeter hook to it. What head and cam would you run? Sorry for so many questions. I know you're the LS. You have to decide on. You got to tell me. Did you tell me what kind of power you're looking for? Garage. First thing you got to start with is power. How much power are you looking for? Because if you can max that size turbo out on a 6-liter with a stock kit. You don't need to change that. You could put one of my low buck truck camshafts in. They're on sale now. RichardHolderPerformance.com. Get a cam and springs. Get injectors. I also have injectors and pump there. And with the 6-liter, I would do ring gap. I would put head studs in it, and then that small cam and springs, and you're on your way to doing whatever that turbo can do. All of what that turbo can do, if that's what you want to do. If you want to make less, if you want to make 700 or 800 horsepower, you can certainly do that. Probably picked up a new turbo for the 2J. Got a BorgWarner EFR 8374. Wow. Excuse me. That's a real money turbo. Now to choose between the nice compact V-band connection to turbo, or go with the more complicated twin scroll T4. Are you going to utilize the twin scroll, or are you going to do a 3-into-2 kind of thing on that 2J? This point in life, I have to go with the high-end power. Can't afford the parts or torque monster to be breaking. Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, what kind of torque did these things make? Yeah, so at 1150 or 1160 on the VORTECH, it had 911 foot-pounds at the peak. And the 871 had 875 foot-pounds. So the VORTECH also had more peak torque. Just happened a little higher, at a little higher RPM. I saw one of the cars at PRI was running a compressed air instead of turbo or nitrous. It was pretty cool. Yeah, the compressed air supercharging, they ran that at WestTech. The guys that do that are the guys that originally owned NOS. And it's very cool because the benefits are tremendous. The charge temperature on a compressed air supercharger is, and the power gains per pound of boost are amazing. It's obviously complicated, and you have to have big compressed air bottles, but it's pretty cool though. Any input on heat difference, Florida weather, which is less trouble with overheating sitting in traffic? I would think that the VORTECH would be better for that, but sitting and idling, I don't know that none of them are generating really any heat. I mean, there might be a little more driving the blowers, but that shouldn't be an issue if your cooling system is right. Where's water injection today? What do you mean? Is it at the same place that it's always been? Just using it to cool charge air and reduce detonation? You ever talking in the background and drive my dog nuts? She thinks someone's at the door. That's because they were just leaving. Then the dogs were barking. So they were actually at the door. So that's a good dog. Richard, looking for an eBay turbo to stuff in the E46 BMW. Nothing crazy. 300 to 350 wheel horsepower. Stock engine is 200. What motor's in there right now, Michael? .700 horsepower range would be good. I wouldn't use that turbo then. I would use a smaller turbo than that for that horsepower range. I'd use an S475 or a VS Racing 7875 Gen 2 or next gen, that kind of thing for that. Because there's no reason to give up. If you're only using part of the potential airflow of that turbo, you'd be better to go to a smaller turbo because then you get better response too. I have 2 turbo manifolds for the JZ. One is open V-band and the other is a legit twin scroll. Even takes dual wastegates to fully divorce the 2 banks. Okay. Yeah, you'd almost have to. Well, you couldn't even do it on the turbine housing either if you want to weld something to that, like I've seen guys do. Because if it's a divided housing all the way, that would be problematic. Have a big block Chevy 572. Just picked up 2 7975 turbos. Will those work or run out of steam at 7,000 RPM? The turbos don't care about engine speed. The only thing that they care about is flow. So at 7,000 RPM, you just have to ask yourself, how much power am I trying to make? What kind of power does the NA motor make? And then if I size the turbos so that they will support that power level, and they will do that. They don't care about what RPM you're doing that at. I've got an A374 in pieces, but all up, I spent about $1,800, including the turbine housing. Okay. Had a 49 big block with a 177. Got greedy, put 3 rods through the pan. How did you hurt it with a 177? Because a big block would, I mean, a 177 is not going to make very much boost on a 490-inch big block. Was it a timing problem or something? EFRs are money, but they are good. No, yeah, there's no doubt you get something good for that if you could pay for that. David, what's going on? Thank you very much. They have a blower for it. I have 3 LS swaps. Everything I've learned, I got it here. Thanks for the support. Thank you very much. We will have a frosty cold beverage on you, David. Compressed air boost gives power without robbing horsepower from the engine. That's true. Yeah, there's no parasitic drive because you've outsourced compressing the air, which is good. That's done off-site, essentially, not in the engine compartment. So you're not losing that. And also, the resulting charge temperature of a compressed air supercharger can be below 0. So having that kind of charge air, really, really good for stuff. I wonder what water methanol would do per application's power curve. I don't know what are you asking about that? What do you think that it does? How big of a tank do you need for the compressed air? These were the ones that they were using on the dyno were gigantic. They were like the size of the fill tanks for nitrous. Richard has a 3-liter M54 6-cylinder, thinking HX30 or a GT30 clone. Yeah, I think you're going to make more power than you think, but a GT3076 or something like that probably would be good. Do you think you can turn a 454 into a 565 big block? I don't think it has the block. I mean, you could sleeve it and do it, but otherwise that block can't be bored out that far. So normally you go with an aftermarket block that's a 4,500 bore block, and then some guys go to 4,600, but you can't take a stock 454 block that far. Anywhere here own or have owned a Lincoln LS? Going to look at an 04 in a little bit. Getaway needs some information if you got any hot rod Lincoln guys. I don't know what a scuba bottle is. This sounds big. Yeah, it's a lot bigger than a scuba bottle. Michael, get a Pulsar G3770 clone. Richard, are you going to stream on Christmas? Probably. Well, I don't know. I'm making Christmas dinner, so I don't know if we'll be able to do that. SEB is a scuba bottle for either firefighters to wear or deep dive swimmers. That'll respond great, makes 350 wheel horsepower without breaking a sweat, and provide plenty of headroom for when you want to go. Yeah, the Pulsar stuff is just more expensive. Just got my snowmobile up and out of the reds. Good. Oh boy, no thanks. I don't want a tank like that. Yeah, they used several too when they were doing the testing at West Tech. Turbos are cooler. They are. Always wanted a rear-wheel drive family car. Can take a stock short block deck to 585, just not with a 454 standard, the standard GM block though. That was my point. Speak with one of the world's experts on this stuff. It's an amazing experience. Yeah, that wouldn't be me. maybe some of the other people. Pulsar is pricey, but they look nice. They do. They look really good. We looked into the Pulsar stuff, and they are good turbos. There's no doubt about it. What's the difference between a tall deck and a short deck 454? Well, it's the deck height. The block actually is taller on one of those than the other one is. But that's not even what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a tall deck. You could use a tall deck, but that really doesn't help you if the block can't be bored out that far. Because I don't know if the tall decks will, if you can go to that size bore on a tall deck other than on an aftermarket tall deck. So the blocks that I'm talking about are all aftermarket blocks. No shade on Pulsar, but for that price, I can get a whole set, a legit whole set. What do you think about the new Ram inline 6-cylinder twin turbo Hurricane motor? I haven't seen anything on it. I haven't seen anything, Nick. I haven't seen any dyno curves or turbo sizing or anything on it. I haven't really looked into it that much, but I haven't seen anything on that. But I'm a big fan of every time the OEMs do factory turbo or blower stuff. I think it's awesome because when they do that, whenever they build those motors to do the thing that they're doing for a long period of time, which for us, for the aftermarket, that means, hey, they've left a lot of room. There's a lot on the table there. So like the twin turbo Chevy Corvette, the 01 thing, that has a lot of potential. There's going to be guys doing 2,000 horsepower versions of those. Freiberger did one hot rod, believe, a big block Chevy 555 short deck. It's not a short deck versus tall deck thing. It's just the bore size of the block. You need to be able to do the bore and the stroke. You don't have to have a tall deck to make a lot of cubic inches. You just have to have a big enough bore because the big block will also fit the stroke length in it. That's not a problem. BS Racing will get it done. So plenty of good Chinese turbo manufacturers now. Isn't the ZZ632 a tall deck? I don't know. It might be. But it's going to be an aftermarket tall deck, though. And so that's the thing. That a factory short deck and a factory tall deck don't have the bore size to make lots of cubic inches. But aftermarket versions of those do. Have you seen the LS adapters that fit the Hellcat superchargers? I have. Just started seeing them around. I would like to do a test on that. Unfortunately, I don't have a Hellcat blower set up, nor do I have the drive assembly, nor do I have the adapters. I have an LS motor, so I'm partway there, I guess. There we go. No idea if this will work, but here's what I've got. 5-liter trip flow 170 heads, 10-to-1, Camry Search 220, 224. I have two GT35 60s. Those will work. You probably don't need 35. A 0.5 AR, though, is pretty tight. So they're going to be fairly responsive. You're probably going to need 2 wastegates for those. But that size turbo will work for what you're doing since you want a fairly reasonable power level. Just ordered my pump. Way to go, Frank. Big thumbs up for Frank. Pulsar G3070 is $800. So we're arguing over literally a couple $100 here. Yeah, but it's a couple $100 as a percentage, though. So if the other one is 4 or 5 or 600, 200 of that is a 33% increase. That's a lot. Interesting. 5.5 vet. Yeah, that is good. That is cool. And I also want to see somebody go faster in one of those Corvettes by putting gearing in it, because I know that if they went to red line, it said in the test, and so the red line's way past the horsepower peak. That tells me that they can go faster in that car. Looking for 600 horsepower, my 6-liter Gen 6. In your opinion, what turbo would provide boost sooner without being too small and running into issues with back pressure? At 600 horsepower with a turbo, you're not going to have back pressure issues. So if you put the inexpensive GT45 on it that we ran, and you're running it at 600 horsepower, which is a stock motor with boost, you're not going to have a problem at all. Plumber, I don't know what you mean by thoughts. Yep, I see your order, Frank. Way to go. Adobe Photoshop. We don't want that. We don't care about that one. Amazon.com. No, thank you. I thought that the people were on strike at Amazon. Good thing I ordered all my stuff early, like a good husband and father. Ideally, your intercooling water should be around negative 400 degrees. I don't know if that. How is the AC system going to be? How much are you going to be able to cool the water off that you're then using to cool the air off? I mean, I've seen guys use the AC system to cool the air like a pre-cooler kind of thing, but I haven't seen them do the water. Amazon's always watching us. Yeah, Michael, I agree. That's more what like Dodge did and what guys were using those things for. Because if you can get anything that you can do to get the air below ambient, if you can get a below ambient transfer medium, then you're doing well, which is what ice water is, which is what these AC charge systems are. You want to get because the boosted air is obviously going to be way hotter than ambient. Most people use an air to air that uses ambient air as the transfer medium, or ambient water, let's say, as a transfer medium. And then the very best that you could do, which most people don't do, is you could get your charge air down to ambient. But if you have colder than ambient transfer medium, then you could get your charge air below ambient, which we've done, like we did on our Bonneville car. We're using ice water. Turbo motors really, really like that. I think Ford was planning to do the same for next gen Lightning. I didn't think that they were cooling the water. I thought that they were just directly cooling the air, but I could be wrong. I haven't seen the layout on the system. Thinking the TIC Performance air to water intercooler on a Holley high ram with an AC coil in the coolant tank. Could also put a fuel loop in there. Okay, yeah, I think you should try it. I could have sworn I've seen the AC system used to cool a transmission on a Jeep Cherokee. I'll get back on my project once I get my torque converter. I can get more work done. Get it all put back in with a 4T80 on the LS4. One piece at a time. There you go. But now you have enough. Now you have enough fuel. That's a very important part. Did you guys, Frank? Did you guys go through that transmission? Dodge is using the AC to cool the air, not the water system. It's a bummer that cold turbo air coincides with cold tires. Yeah, It'd be nice if they could just heat the ground surface, right? And then have cold air with everything else. Have you tested compressed air supercharging? Yes. Well, I haven't done it directly, but I was there at WestTech when they did the compressed air supercharging. Jeff Smith did an excellent story probably for Hot Rod on it. And I know the guys really well that did it because they're the guys that used to own NOS, Dale and Carl. And that's really, so I was there while they were doing that. It's very, very cool. Excuse the pun. Is there a cam you recommend for an Elm 7 still using stock springs with a carb, healthy street cam, horsepower estimates? Well, it'd be easier for you to tell me how much power you want, and then also tell me why you're wanting to use stock springs. Because getting lots of power with stock springs is not a good idea. There are NSR cams, so no springs required cams. Like the one that I would recommend for most guys running a 5.3 for driving it around would be the BTR Truck Norris NSR deal. Or I would recommend you just putting springs in. You could buy my cam and springs for less than you could buy other people's cams. So there's no reason not to put springs in it, especially if you have springs that are 100, 200, 300,000 miles on them. They're pretty worn out. And whatever cam you pick, whether it's a BTR NSR cam, if you want to go that way. And technically speaking, my cam and a BTR Truck Norris cam, you can use with stock springs, not even the NSR version. They just have to be the 550 lift springs, not the ones that come on the 5.3 motors. Eric just showed off that Holley is making a high ram that fits small block Chevy. Yeah, the small block, they've had the small block one out, and they also have a big block one out now. Just being lazy. No, I get that. In fact, in talking, Brian and I had this conversation years ago, and because I was curious, I thought when he came out with the NSR version of his Truck Norris cam, which is their best-selling cam, the Truck Norris is, and when they came out the NSR version, I thought that's going to be an even bigger seller because guys could just put the cam in. And he said, no, the regular Truck Norris outsells that by a lot. So guys are more interested in putting a cam with springs in it. Would you recommend forged internals for doing a 6-liter for 700 horsepower? No, you don't need it. You just need ring gap. And you need ring gap and the right tune, and 700 horsepower is really easy. Why does Finnegan's Garage think compressed air is naturally aspirated? I don't know. You have positive pressure in there, so it's not naturally aspirated. I opened it up, put some new bushings on the passenger side, output shaft, new gaskets and filter, but everything else looks okay. Okay, cool. Just looked at it. Dodge chills the intercooler water for the Demon. So they have a... Does the intercooler have a... Well, okay, that's good. They're cooling the water in there, and they're running, I guess, Freon through it or something. Seems like a not very efficient way to do it. And doesn't that setup only work for a short period of time too? Because it can't be continuous. Because I don't think the AC system will keep up with that. But that's cool. I thought that they were doing the pre-cooler things, the pre-chiller things. I'd be curious to see what they get their water temperature down to in that system with their super ultra mega chiller. What's the difference in power between the NSR and the regular cam? It's only about 6 horsepower, 6 or 7 horsepower. That video's up, LT1 Camaro, where we compared the Truck Norris NSR to the regular Truck Norris. And one of them, the only difference is one of them is 550 lift or 552 or whatever, and one of them is 500 lift. Run the system to chill the water, make a pass, re-chill the water. Okay. Yeah, because I wouldn't think you'd want your AC on while you're making a pass. Switch out compressed air with compressed O2. Yeah. They tried running instead of nitrous injection, they tried running oxygen, because that's eventually what's making the power, is you're liberating the oxygen molecules from the nitrous compound. But they tried pure oxygen, but it's pretty volatile though. Been getting over an injury. I figure I healed hopefully in 3 more months, limiting to my right hand use. So it's been slow. Yeah, if you're hurt, that's a tough deal. I mean, I'd just use an excuse that, hey, it's too cold. Would you use the extra 150 foot-pounds of 3,800 more than you use the extra 150 horsepower? 6,800 ticked up a little bit, 7723. Seeing the import guys spray water on the air-to-air intercoolers. I wonder if it's worth the hassle. That does work. And it works really well for recovery rate. And they also spray nitrous and CO2 on the air-to-air intercoolers. I have videos up on what that did. I imagine the sales for BTR is more placebo than necessary. If you're changing a cam, it feels better to change the springs also. Yeah, but I would argue, well, I think that when people are thinking about that, some people think that changing the springs is harder than changing the cam. But I don't think that that's the case, having done lots of both of those. What's the stoic value of pure O2? I don't know. Water does a great job of displacing heat. It does. That's why we use ice water. Funny to watch. They run O2 in push mowers. Wondered about running small amounts in high altitude cars. Changing the cams won't work. It certainly takes longer, I think. With the spring compressors that they have, the tools that they have, we're going to be selling those pretty quickly here. I think I got to test a set of them. But it's really pretty easy to do. Do you think a diverging nozzle on the turbo outlet would help extract exhaust gas from the turbo? I can tell you that an outward cone to a bigger exhaust flows better on the outlet side of a turbo. For a budget tow truck, which would you choose, a 455 Buick or a 500 Cadillac? I think I would go with the Cadillac. Just, it's going to make more torque in the range where you would be using a tow truck. A lot of guys installing a cam are also doing it on an engine with 200,000 or 300,000 miles. Yeah, I think that's, if you're getting wrecking yard motors, they're going to be that. I'm wanting to get the Sentra to run a high 12 quarter mile. Should need 260 wheel horsepower. Richard, can you get an LS3 offset compressor? I really like the ones that bolt onto the rocker stand and use a ratchet to compress the spring. Bolt onto the rocker stand and use it. Oh, the ones that you lever down? I've seen those. Ours are the bolt down ones that push the spring down. Oxygen has a habit of melting things. Oxygen is an oxidizer. It's right there in the name, right? Crane 7741 hydraulic roller is a great big block Chevy blower cam. Teague Marine uses this cam, and there are 1,000 to 1,200 horsepower packages. Would also work great in a car. 236, 246. Yeah, that seems pretty. That's like the Comp has one like that for the big block. I think theirs is a 236, 242, if I remember right, for the big block. They're shelf cams. Extreme Marine. 230, 236, 248, 240, 242, 248. Wow. It's like big boy cams. 236, 242. Yeah, that's the one that I was looking at. There. With enough oxygen, iron is your fuel. So, well, before the iron, the aluminum piston parts and aluminum head parts are going to do that too. You can do it at a Cobalt that ran 1191, 114. How much power was the Cobalt making? Same with the Mazda Speed 3s. I like those too. I did an intercooler install on a Mazda Speed 3. Have you ever had field cars out there? Some of the most fun I've had. What's a field car? Liquid hydrogen mixed with liquid oxygen. Okay. Aluminum will melt, but not really burn. We shot some of it through the side of the aluminum head on my Mustang. It's really cool. Molten aluminum. If only the Mazda Speed 3s were all-wheel drive, it would have helped a lot. 280-ish ZZP stuff works good. That's the nice thing. That's why I like factory supercharged and turbocharged things, is that you can just add so much power to them. Just crank up the boost. Pulleys for the blower, and then just turning up the boost on the factory stuff until you run out of turbo, then turbo upgrades, intercooler upgrades. That's all cool stuff. I remember back when I had my 5-liter looking longingly at the Mercours and the SVO Mustangs and stuff and thinking, that would be so cool. The turbo, and then put an intercooler on, and the bigger turbo, ported head and cams. Field beaters. A bunch of us would just rip around the property and through the woods. Head jumps. Would you do that in trucks, Ben, or cars? You can expect engine parts to be aggressively oxidized on pure oxygen. Yep. I ordered a Volvo electric power steering pump for my Crown Vic, trying to clean up the room for forward facing. Can I email you my exact build in mind so I can get the best option? I would like to run one of your cams. I just want the best that would go with the engine and turbo combo that flows the best. You can send me whatever information you want, but what you're asking to do is very, very easy. It's literally just a cam and springs and ring gap and the right size injectors and a tune and a turbo that supports that power level with an intercooler, and you're good to go. You don't have to be considering, different rockers or different cylinder heads or different intake manifolds or any of that. It's literally just boost. Building a Grand Prix ZZP stuff, electric power steering pump. All right, Danny, you're here. You're here, man. You only got a few minutes left, but that's good. Truck doors cam. All right. Still using a blower. So I'm going to switch to turbos. You can certainly make a lot more power on that 3800 with a turbo than you can with the blower. You have to a blower upgrade is not a bad idea to put a bigger blower on there, because it's, we've done a lot of work to the M90s that we did for the M90. We ran it both on the LS and then also on the 3800, and you can spin the bejesus out of the M90 and then put a big inlet on it like we did. We had the guys from Jokers port one, and so we've gone all in on the, other than putting a cog belt on it, we've gone all in, I think, on the Supercharger. But it's just, then we just put a turbo on. It's like, here's 625 horsepower, like 13 pounds. It's like, that's just so much easier. Anything we get our hands on, diesel rabbits, Metros, had a VW Bug, stock cars. That would be fun, going out and raging around on the trails with that. Most people's problems with the electric pump are related to them running in fail-safe mode at a constant 75% pulse width modulation. Yeah, Moss, I'll put my email address down. You can send it. Killer Bee. There's my email. Keep it 100. Back when I was a mechanic, I had a nice looking Monte Carlo SS. Came with a Supercharger 3800. Man, the lady put the non-mixable coolant in it. It was like rubber looking chunks. Different subject lifter preload. I have stock Ellis lifters and a low buck truck. I had to deck the block and plane the heads. Okay, 20,000s total. I got BTR 7375 push rods. Am I still preloading the lifters? Is preloading the lifters 90,000s too much? I don't know what I don't ever go by that amount. When you have the cam on the heel of the cam, and then you get your setup to 0 so that the lifter, so that the push rod's touching the lifter and the push rod's touching the rocker and the rocker's touching the valve tip. How many turns does it take to tighten the rocker down to the rocker cup or the rocker stand? So that's how I measure preload. I don't do it in thousands. 1.75 turns is too much. That's getting into the danger zone. You could hold the valve open like that. You need a shorter push rod. Series 3 NA intake with a turbo is pretty popular in 3800 swap Fieros. Yeah. And then I tested on the 3800, I tested those inserts to get rid of the runner section so you could unbolt the runner section and then put these in as a radius entry and then run that so that you have a short runner, long runner kind of thing. And it does exactly what you think a short runner, long runner thing does. Makes a little bit more power on top and then less down low. And so where you want your power, like we were talking about with this blower thing, I have a ported supercharged lower for a Gen 5. And then I have a plate, and then I have an elbow with a 90 millimeter or 102 millimeter throttle body on it that will run on the Big Bang one. It's not going to be ideal, but actually I don't want to have runner length on that particular motor because we're not trying to make lots of power. The turbo will do that for us. Long run of the world. Tui says 100,000s, which would be 2 turns. He says that about what? Yeah, 2 turns is too much. That's definitely in the danger zone. I like from half a turn to 1.5 to be the safe zone. Have you seen the VR6 heads? I have. The ports alternate in length for both the intake and exhaust because of the shared head. Pretty interesting. Yeah, I think that's a packaging thing, because of that design, which I think that's a cool motor. I like seeing different stuff like that. ZCP has an intercooler. They do. I have a test on that intercooler too. We ran that. Somebody let me borrow it. I think JPL let me borrow that. One day I might truck intake manifold on a 4.6, even if I have to cut the hood. The truck intake worked. I don't think it does as good as the PI intake manifold does, though. On the 2 valve. Unless you're talking about a 4 valve, then that's different. Although we did do the aviator intake manifolds. Mike, I've seen guys make a lot of power with those VR6s. Porting them up, cams, lots of boost. 4x2 valve for life. Yep, that's right. And I think that they had problems. And I don't remember if the factory had problems with the non-PI intakes or the PI intakes, where they made the crossover section aluminum and not plastic because they were wearing out or leaking or something. My intake air temps before the intercooler was in the 260 range at full throttle. Okay. And was it a lot lower than that after the intercooler? And 260 coming out of the blowers is problematic. There can be issues related to that. The thing that I'm still curious about on the 3800 is the headers. I've tested the headers now 4 times, and they have not shown any power at all. And people swear by them. They're saying, and one of the arguments is that, yeah, but they reduce the knot count. Okay, well, if they reduce the knot count and it adds timing, that's power from timing. And that's a benefit, obviously, from doing that. If it allows you to do that, or if it self-adjusts like they're talking about, that's good. But I'm curious if does it make any power though? Assuming that we have an optimized tune for both situations, does it make any power? And I just haven't seen it yet. They did the plastic crossover pipe for a really short time, but now OEM intakes are hard to come by. I stay at full throttle for a while. It's been in the 160s now. So you're dropping 100 degrees of charge temperature with the intercooler. That's good. That's better, obviously. You'd like that to be at 60. Does that mean the exhaust flow on the 3800 is so poor that the headers aren't helping? You could look at it that way. I don't think that that's it. I think you could look at it that the stock stuff is already good. And we used the stock stuff for our turbo combination that made 20 or 30 at I think it was at 13 pounds. And so the stock stuff obviously worked really well. I know that people sell a different front manifold for that, but so far I haven't seen that be a necessity. Turbo. Turbo at 12. Turbo. I thought that on one of these that we were pretty sure that we were more than... Okay, it was at 14.5 pounds. So 1 bar. So 613 horsepower. That's such a good looking curve. It's so smooth. So smooth and problem free. That information is for Terry to help him cool down his Cherokee with an M90 blower. Okay. In my opinion, the 3800 needs better heads. Yeah, they did those aluminum ones, but they're just not very readily available. I still have stock manifolds with an oversized crossover. What's a safe boost limit for a Navigator 5.4? I don't know. I would put ring gap in it anyway. And we have run boost on those motors, but I don't remember doing it on a stock one though. We've done boost on lots of other stock modular Fords, and so you could make a lot of power with them. So I don't think you're going to break one as long as the tune's right. I do want to do a big bang on a 462 valve. I'm almost thinking I would want a short runner intake manifold for that to not make torque, because those things with a PI intake manifold on them make almost as much torque as they do horsepower. They're really pretty torquey. Got 1 more minute. 75% are picking the low speed torque. The 3800 should be fun though. That should be a good little turbo endeavor. So 14 at 600. So we should be at 900 at 29 pounds. Their fingers crossed. They had an epiphany, a cool custom cam with specs. 260, 274, 500 lift. Is it 260, 274 at 50? And I don't understand why do you have such a big range for hydraulic roll, or such a big range for LSA on either the NA one or the blower one? Do you have any old data on intake manifold swaps on LB9s? I don't. I've never run one of those on the engine dyno that I can remember. I have done lots of tune port stuff, but it was all on 350s or 383s. I did one LB9. That's right, I did. When I compared the 5-liter Ford versus the 5-liter Chevy, we did the LB9 versus the HO302 for the Ford, and we did a Holley Stealth Ram, but I didn't compare it directly to the tune port one. But I have done that on the L98, so we know what that does. I bet a 4.62 valve rods will 506 horsepower, but we've already gone way over that on a stock one, so we know that we've gone to 700 on those. Looking to do a 3-hour drive this summer, flex fuel. We're gonna get 93 on the way. It'll be safe to drive with 160, 180 degree intake air temps. Is your intake air temp that high just cruising down the road? That seems really, really high. Are you grabbing air from inside the engine compartment? I believe the 3800 heads will flow around 880 CFM. Would that be enough to get 360 horsepower NA? No, because the 360 horsepower NA would only be for a V8. You have to multiply that 360 number by 0.75 to figure out what it will do on a V6. Back in the day, everybody said stock bottom ends were only good for 450 wheel horsepower. Well, we used to not even be 450 wheel horsepower. It used to be 450 horsepower. And then they adjusted that up to the wheel horsepower. The LSA choice was for dynamic compression, so it's not too high or too low to get away from pinging. I know there's just a range, though. That's what I think. I thought that you were getting specific about some sort of cam that you wanted to look at. And on that note, it is time to go. Hopefully, I'll see you guys all tonight. I'm almost done editing the video on blower stuff for What's It Worth.